Good morning, everyone. My name is Sher Halos. I will be your moderator today. Welcome to our live webinar titled Managing Library Electronic Resources with FOLIO ERM. Before we begin with the webinar, let us pause for a while for our prayer and also for our Philippine National Anthem. Dear Father, we offer everything and thank you for everyone gathered here today to walk with you. May we ask you for your blessing and guidance so that the activities we set for this undertaking be successful. We ask you to open our eyes to see the wonderful things from this activity. We ask that you open our ears so that we may retain the invaluable knowledge. Open our minds for us to think wisely, put us with understanding, cooperation, and peace in fulfilling our responsibilities. Open our hearts so that we may receive your everlasting love, and open our spirit so that we may know that you are with us all throughout the day. We ask all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, helas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuyak ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, di ka pasisingin, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo pagaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pamay di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Again, good morning, everyone. We are 228 strong. Today, we would like to start our webinar, but first with our guidelines. Okay, the participants' microphones and videos are turned off by default. If you have questions on the topic, please type it on the designated Q&A box found at the lower right-hand side of your screen. Questions will be read at the end of the presentation. This will ensure a smooth flow and to not interrupt the speaker. E-certificates will be provided for participants who have registered, attended, and answered our brief survey after this webinar. Please wait a minimum of 2 weeks before receiving your certificates via email. We will be having a short, fun game at the end of the webinar, so stay tuned until the very end. And lastly, please sit back, relax, and have a fun learning experience with us here at Ebsco. Okay, so now it's time to introduce the speaker. We are honored to have Mike McKinnon, Director of SaaS Innovation at Ebsco Information Services. Mike has been working in technology for more than 16 years, with 13 of those years in the library industry. He was an early team member of ProQuest Summon and Intota products and an original contributor of Plum Analytics in the research, analytics, and engagement space. For the past 5 years at Ebsco, he has worked with Ebsco SaaS services, and he currently focuses on Ebsco services supporting FOLIO, an open source community-driven library services platform. Consistent across all his roles, Mike has had the challenge to work with new-to-market services. Summon was the first single centrally indexed discovery tool to market. Plum Analytics was the first robust research impact measurement tool to include not just social media metrics, but usage, citation, news impacts, and more. And of course, FOLIO is the first microservices ILS platform in the library industry. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Mike McKinnon. Hi, Mike.
Hello, hello. Hope everybody's doing well today. I really, that's such a long intro for me. I probably should shorten that down a little bit, but thank you for that, Cher. Okay, so my plan today for everybody is we're gonna go through some slides initially, just so that we're on the same page topically, both with what FOLIO is, Ebsco's participatory engagement in that community, and then topically about this webinar in particular about FOLIO ERM functionality specifically. And then we're going to go into live demo, and I'm going to show a lot of this live. So if there's any questions that you have from the slides, Many of them, I hope, will be answered in the live demo, so everybody should feel comfortable at the end of it. And then obviously at the end of the live demo, if you do still have extra questions, I'm happy to stay and answer them. So without further ado, I will share my slides. Hopefully everybody can see them.
Yes, we can see Mike.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so if you came in early, you saw a video recording that the OLF, the Open Library Foundation, had put together to really promote institutional engagement with FOLIO, not only Texas A&M, but vendors that are also in support of FOLIO, such as Index Data, GBV for consortia in Germany. There's several. Duke is on that webinar or that media reel. So there's a lot of participants in that opening clip, and it's really relevant. I think that video is a little bit old now. It's probably 2 years old, but it's still very relevant today, just as much as it was when that video came out. FOLIO is an open source library services platform. It would be a displacement for your ILS. It's an acronym. It stands for the Future of Libraries is Open. It is not an Ebsco product. Ebsco is engaged in that space, but it is governed by the OLF, the Open Library Foundation. Now, the OLF is filed under what's called a 503c organization, which means it's a nonprofit. And FOLIO is under an Apache 2 license, so it's highly permissive. In fact, what you'll see is if you're engaged with FOLIO in the community anywhere, you'll see releases and documentation that is transparent. If you want to go see what happened in the most current sprint release, you can jump onto a live stream Zoom call, or you could get into the video that's recorded and put onto YouTube. There's nothing that is opaque about FOLIO. It's all highly transparent. Individual vendors that are engaged in the community as implementation services and support members, they may do their own custom deployments and have their own rollout, if you will, of FOLIO, but FOLIO as a platform is completely open. You as a library anywhere could go to GitHub. You could have your systems librarians download the corresponding environment and set up a FOLIO tenant if you wanted to. So this is all really empowering to libraries. The intent is to move libraries past ILS that are legacy, that have a lot of technological debt. If you look at the most recent ILS in the market is Alma at about 10 years old, 9 to 10 years old. The other open source platforms out there are even older, right? Your Qualiolays and Kohas, et cetera. So this is a move to get you into a modern architecture, a new open source LSP. Okay, now FOLIO is not the only tool that the OLF govern. You may be familiar with Coral. Coral is an open source ERM specific tool that used to be governed by Circe Dynex. It's now under the OLF. Viewfind and similarly Blacklight, which isn't listed here, but is also included. Viewfind and Blacklight are both also governed by the OLF. GoKB, which is the global open knowledge base, used to be governed by JISC and is now under the remit of the OLF as well. And the project Reshare you may or may not know of is an ILL tool, also built on FOLIO code, but selectively built that way, meaning there was no forcing them to build on FOLIO. They wanted an open source, original architects of Reshare wanted an open source tool that was modular, that they could scale it if they needed to add functionality, and that also added both not only like INSIP functionality for supporting traditional ILS calls or ILL calls, but also just a more open API that doesn't have that same kind of restraint. So they selected FOLIO code to build Reshare on. So a lot of good stuff is rolled into the OLF. So FOLIO, I already mentioned a little bit of what this is. It's designed to be a full functioning LSP. And in fact, probably only one of two real LSP that are in the market. LSP is a Marshall breeding term that was used years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago. And I believe even WMS is under that cloud, if you will, that coverage of LSP. But I think that that's probably still pretty much a stretch. A lot of Sierra is Millennium logic, right? Triple I's Millennium logic. So in any event, FOLIO is a modern LSP designed for you to scale at need. So if you need a smaller platform, you could have a smaller functioning platform. You wouldn't need bloat. You wouldn't need functionality that's forced on you by some of the other enterprise tools. If you want a lot of customization and you want growth of FOLIO, you want it to connect to your research office CRIS system, you want to connect to a university publishing press, you want it to connect to archives and repositories so that you can do the bibliographic metadata descriptive work in FOLIO for an archive, right? You could do all of that with FOLIO because FOLIO scales that way. So really just depends on what you're after. This is a core differentiator of the FOLIO architecture. And we're very familiar with this. When you think, maybe that sounds like pie in the sky when I talk about this modular scalability, but we're actually very familiar with it outside of library systems architecture. We have our own mobile devices. I happen to use an iPhone. My iPhone has multiple apps that give me map functionality, right? I could have Apple Maps that comes with it. I could go download Google Maps. I could use Waze. There are several different maps that I could put on my own phone, and one isn't necessarily forced to be used every time that I go and plug it into another system like a car or something like that. So I get choice as a user, and librarians should have the power of choice with how they catalog their collections, how they leverage knowledge bases, how they connect to discovery tools. They should have choice. So this idea of a modular architecture around functionality that connects to modular underpinnings for knowledge bases and user management and IDMs or IDPs and authentication platforms, all of that is very important and is the core base of FOLIO. And then lastly, just that bottom bullet there about APIs. FOLIO's APIs are completely open and transparent. So if you are a systems librarian, you have technical expertise, you literally can see everything that's being passed from one application to another, unless you're using some vendor specific app that has been blocked, but put onto a FOLIO platform. But FOLIO as a core, looking at bibliographic records that may move from an inventory application into something on, say, like an orders application to track a POF and order form and the underlying license agreement, you can see all of those fields of data in the various API calls that are being made. So using that then API, because it's highly open, allows you to do some really cool customizations and integrations, and we'll show some of that when we get to the live demo. So Ebsco specific services, Ebsco does have a FOLIO team, both implementation, training, and support, as well as FOLIO specific engineers and architects that work in our AWS environment. Ebsco's FOLIO is hosted in AWS, Amazon Web Services. At this time, we don't host in other environments. We don't host local, and we don't host in, say, Google Cloud or our own data centers for that matter. All of it's hosted in AWS. This actually has a lot of benefits, in that you have scalability, privacy, redundancy, and you get underlying AWS SLAs. So for libraries that want services of software that have a bunch of failover, so they're always going to be up and running, and a bunch of privacy layers around PII, AWS is a great environment to be hosting your service in. In addition, since Ebsco is highly engaged here, it allows us to connect Ebsco hosted environments into a bunch of different Ebsco services that we've been known for years, whether that's purchasing collections on Gobi or purchasing collections on ECM, the Ebsco Content Manager, if that's connecting to Ebsco's knowledge base. So maybe it's not Ebsco specific content and you're just connecting to an authority knowledge base, that's an advantage, not only for discovery services and A to Z list services, but also simply for a licensing ERM resources where you can track license data and counter usage statistics and the agreements correlated to those licenses and everything else. So a big advantage with connecting to Ebsco's KB. And then of course, Ebsco support teams, we have global support, highly responsive, that does all of the support. So if you're concerned at all about the fact that this is an open source service, know that this is a supported open source service from Ebsco. There are global partners, and potentially you could deploy with OnStrike there in the Philippines as well. But for Ebsco FOLIO services, Ebsco support teams are definitely going to be great for you. Okay, now before I jump into ERM specific, I really wanted to point out something that we all know, and that is that while these numbers on the left may not represent your library spend on collections, we know that those giant blue bars on the left that represent EResources versus the orange bars that represent physical resources, we know there's a huge difference in spend as a portion of your collection between E and P. And by that, I mean that libraries by and large have huge portions of their collections that are E, somewhere in the range of 75% plus, depending upon the library type, library size, but a huge portion of your collection is E. And yet, many libraries, when you talk to them about how do they manage EResources, oftentimes you still unfortunately have discussions about very bespoke management. I'm maybe using a spreadsheet, or I take my license agreements that I get from Ebsco or from another publisher or a contact license vendor, and I save those licenses in my Google Drive or a Dropbox or some other folder, shared folder somewhere, but they're individual. And we just put them into different folders. One says, these are my 2020 licenses. Another says, these are my 2021s. And so it's really hard to manage, especially if you have a large footprint, it's really hard to manage your ERM relative to the tools that you have that manage your print collections, right? You've been using ILS that are print centric for a long time. And that makes sense. There's a lot of bibliographic descriptive work that you need to do that many times in EResources you don't, but that doesn't really make up for the gap that EResources have a much higher rate of change and a higher need to be able to track both usage as well as to track like the year-over-year licenses, agreements, and potentially embargo periods and other data points around those EResource collections. So if you're looking around, maybe where you're watching me and you're sitting with colleagues, if you're looking around saying, yes, this represents me, we use spreadsheets and we use other things, then you might really heavily consider looking at Folio, maybe for long-term as an ILS tool, but even in the immediate, you could use Folio for just EResource management today. Remember I said that Folio is modular, so you can choose which applications you use, and Folio can just be an ERM tool for libraries. So what is included in Ebsco's Folio ERM when you don't think about the full Folio tool? ERM includes the ability to track agreements, includes the ability to track your holdings data, which is being powered by Ebsco's knowledge base, the ability to track and load your agreements and licenses, any organizational relationships you have. So it doesn't have to be just a publisher or vendor that you work with. You could track partner organizations, or maybe you have sister organizations. You want to track different library locations. Maybe they're managed by different teams, and so you want to track those under an organization. There's different ways that you could use the organizations app. Settings, of course, we'll get to, and that you need to be able to customize settings in your FOLIO tenant, but you have the ability to track your orders. So maybe you want to see, hey, what was the last time I engaged with Joseph and Cher and Bon about an Ebsco order? I could go into my orders app and I could see what the previous order was for a specific collection or a database. I could look even all the way down to that PDF that might be there. Of course, if you have other needs around acquisition workflows, like your invoices or finances, you can track budgets, you can track funds, and you could even track individual invoices as it relates to, say, being EDIFACT compliant and engaging at a bursar level in your finance office. So lots of different functionality that comes with FOLIO ERM. Now you notice the bullets on the left do say that enabling Ebsco's knowledge base to your Ebsco FOLIO ERM means that there are other benefits to you as well, such as the full text finder, which is Ebsco's knowledge or link resolver that's connected to our knowledge base. It also, full text finder also comes with our A to Z list. So it's called publication finder. So publication finder, full text finder, and our KB are all part of that top bullet there. The usage consolidation would be the ability to aggregate and track counter compliance statistics on your behalf. And then lastly is what I've been talking about connecting to the KB. So there's a lot of power there in this bundled suite. Now, if you aren't familiar with the KB, it's big. And there's really, if you look across the industry, there's really 3 authority knowledge bases that are available. You could probably extend to maybe 4, but that 4th one is going to be GoKB, the global open knowledge base, and it's not the most authoritative one. It's not bad for something that's openly available, but it's definitely not as authoritative as Ebsco's KB. The other ones that are in that first 3 count would be ProQuest Ex Libris has their knowledge base for ALMA, and OCLC has a knowledge base primarily for bibliographic collections, their book records, but their E side is a little bit softer, I'll say, but that said, there's still definitely an authority knowledge base out there. So of those that are available, Ebsco's is really, really large. And there's actually a treatment we do to records that those other knowledge bases really don't benefit from. And that is that we do a lot of subject level metadata work where it's not included on the slide, but it's called our Ebsco knowledge graph. And the knowledge graph, what it does is it allows us to correlate different ontologies to similar areas, particularly around controlled vocabularies from the various publishers of content that we index. We can then relate those disciplines or ontology level data points so that it's easier when patrons who aren't information specialists, when they're engaging with discovery tools, or we need to look at subject specific, say, umbrellas for subject browsing in a publication finder and in an A to Z list, or if I want to go look at every single title that's available under a specific discipline, it allows me a little bit more breadth there because I have the ability to relate to these ontologies. So we do a lot of enrichment in our KB is what I'm trying to say. And that would be connected into Folio, and you would benefit from that. Now, if you've seen the last, I presented Folio Full, the entire ILS solution, boy, maybe 3 months ago or so, give or take, maybe 4. And if you haven't seen that one, then there's a lot to catch up on for who's adopted Folio. If you came for that one, there is still some new ones that are on the list. That said, I really wanted to highlight, again, for this particular session, those that have adopted ERM first or only. And only the sites that are only on ERM still are the ones that are highlighted here. But of the ones that are on only, the 13 that are on only ERM, 10 of those are going to go to Folio Full. So a lot of libraries view this as a slower migration path to Folio Full. But in the immediate, they see benefits in using Folio's ERM functionality to help manage their EResource collections. Now, also on this list, long up here has been Cornell University. Cornell was an original contributor to Folio, doing a lot of development resources of Folio, being engaged in the special interest groups, in architect conversations with Index Data and Ebsco. And they adopted Folio ERM almost 2 years ago, about 18, 19 months ago. So a long time ago. And they just, in June, I think, of this year, they went from ERM to full. So they upgraded, if you will, or migrated into using the inventory to manage their physical collections, managing circulation, acquisitions, workflows, et cetera. And if you look at Cornell's white papers about Folio and their decision for doing so, they were on Voyager before. And so if you look at why they chose Folio, a lot of it is about future goals and future functionality. And they saw it 20 months ago when they were originally adopting ERM to say, well, we know that we can grow as an organization on Folio over time because of that modularity. So it allowed them to implement at a pace that suited their library. And just for resources, because I'll probably be leaving this slide deck for the group if you would like access to the slide deck afterwards. If you're looking for resources on Folio, these are some URLs. If you're sitting there on your computer right now and you want to tab out of the Zoom window and go look at your browser, feel free to go to wiki.folio.org. That's probably one of the best URLs up there. Tons of documentation. There's URLs on wiki.folio.org with credentialed access to Folio tenants that have data in it. So if you want to play in Folio, you can go do that. If you're a developer and you want to go look at some of the details, dev.folio.org has a lot of resources for you. There's just lots of places to go if you have questions, exploratory questions. Okay. So with that, I will share, hopefully, Chrome. You seeing it now?
Yes.
Mike.
Okay, good. Okay, so in Chrome here, I am going to start here with Folio, and you have to mind me that the Zoom window takes up a little bit of top range here on the page, so I'll just come down a little bit. So what you're seeing here is me inside of Ebsco's Sandbox for Folio. You would have your own, tenant URL and your tenant data, et cetera. But inside of Folio, it's a very clean look and feel. And what you're seeing here is a full Folio functionality ILS. It has the ability to do physical item check in, check out. So if I wanted some SIP2 connections to local checkout machines, great. Pardon me, I could look at my circulation logs. I could do my data imports and data exports for MARC records or EAD or Dublin Core, or I could come in here and I could manage exports in bulk if I wanted to, or do bibliographic transcriptive work in inventory and look for collections that I have on my shelves. So Folio ILS, the full system, has a lot of functionality here. And you could see that from a UI perspective, the way that Folio works is it's applications across the top, and then extra apps in a dropdown if they don't fit. So the larger I make the screen, you notice less and less apps fit across the top and they go into the dropdown. So this is mobile compliant. So if you were on a mobile device walking through the stacks, you could certainly have Folio up to look at some records if you needed to find them. And then from a UI perspective, you notice that it does it does some pagination with this left tree, if you will. And then when you find a record and you click into details, a detail record pops out here. So this is in these accordion views. This is how Folio as a UI operates, and it does this across all apps. Now, what I'm going to show you today, though, is ERM. So we're going to log out from this full Folio tenant, and I'm going to go into ERM only. And you'll notice my apps have changed. This is for two things. One, if you have permissions set at a user level, you can go into settings and you can manage user permission sets, individual user connections there. It looks like I have a profile blocker here on permissions ability, but you would be able to manage user permissions here if you had that allocated access. In my settings app, but you'll notice that this is all relative to ERM. Those print functionality apps are now gone. I don't have the ability to manage circulation anymore. I can't do check-in and check-out. They're no longer there. No more import, export, no inventory app. I don't even have that inventory dropdown unless I zoom in here. So my apps have changed. Well, they have changed because I am in an ERM tenant, or sorry, ERM profile. The tenant's the same, but my profile's the same. So for you as an institution, if you were considering using Folio as an ERM service, well, this could be your tenant where you don't have extra bloat. You don't have the apps that aren't available to you, and you don't have to have a confused or even like a forced workflow for your day-to-day interactions. If you're going to have a specific workflow about managing a license that may be expiring that day, you don't have to worry about inventory apps or check-in and check-out apps or any of that navigational blockage. It's very streamlined for your workflows based on permissions for you as a user, as a librarian. Okay, so that said, I'm in Folio ERM here, and you'll notice that oops, I want to go the other way. Notice that I'm in eHoldings. What's a good place to start? eHoldings is my library's electronic resource footprint. This is powered by our knowledge base. And you can see that right here, this is connecting to Ebsco's KB. Now, if I had other KBs, I could connect other knowledge bases. If I needed to assign specific users that only had access to this, from a settings point of view, I could do that. And you'll notice also in settings, so just like on our mobile devices, you have a settings app in Android, you have a settings app in iPhone, and it allows you, in iOS, sorry, and it allows you to create rules around how the applications function, right? Whether or not you want those apps to track usage is a good example. You can determine how they alert you, or does it have a little red badge that says, you know, hey, you have a new text message. So you get to control how those apps engage in those operating systems. Well, Folio similarly has a settings app that controls how the apps function for your tenant. So in my eHoldings, I can come back here and I'm searching across the Ebsco knowledge base that has been connected, that API that's been connected to this Folio tenant. You'll notice I can search hierarchically. So I could start at a provider level. I can search across providers for the different packages that they have, or I could search at a package level. Different business source packages from Ebsco, Business Source Complete, Premier, Ultimate, etc. So I can search providers, packages. I could even look for individual titles. And I could find titles that are available to me, and then the underlying metadata behind that title. Now you'll notice in this title, This is only available from VLE Books. Sorry, my browser here is, let me go like this instead. So you notice it's only available from VLE Books and it's enabled, it's selected. But if I click into there and I say, hey, I actually want to disable this, it's easy for me to do that at either the individual title level, which is where we came in, or at the package level. This title is selected from this, this package. Here's the metadata around this title. If I used tags heavily, I know some libraries use a lot of tags in their Folio instance because the searching functionality that's on that left margin when we first started, you could search by tags. So one of the nice attributes of Folio that our developers working with librarians noted is that librarians may want custom tags for things that aren't related at all, but have some underlying current of similarity. And so using a tag that says something like, hey, we have a renew by November tag list, or we've got things that are STEM related specific resources that aren't going to be tracked at a publisher, package, or title level, but I can bundle them, if you will, in a pseudo bundle via tags. So I could search by tags if I wanted to, or add tags to this title. In this case, my particular resource settings, is this something that I want to display in my A to Z list or display in my discovery service? I could say, yes, I do want that to display in my A to Z list and my discovery service. If I had specific proxy settings or access URLs, I could put that here. If I had specific embargo periods or coverage range states, I could add all of that here to this title. And then you notice down here that I have my agreement. So what I want to do first, though, is I'm going to disconnect this agreement. I'm not going to show notes or usage there. I'm actually going to remove this title from my holdings completely. And notice this all happens in real time. Title is updated. This means that the backend knowledge base that is powering your Ebsco discovery service, or powering Ebsco's link resolver, or powering your Ebsco A to Z list, all of those have been updated. So if you currently manage EDS, your discovery service, and then you manage separately your EResource footprint. So you go into Ebsco admin to turn on resources for discovery. And then separately, you go over and you manage resources that you bought. So you track it in an Excel sheet, or you upload an agreement. Now you can put all of that in the same place, one workflow, where you manage your EResource footprints, your agreements, licenses, and downstream patron-facing functionality. Okay, so I'm actually going to look for a different title. Let's see here. I just got a new book. I think it's in here. Unbroken by Hillenbrand. Conley. Hillenbrand. Oh, this is the audiobook, looks like. Yep, audiobook. Okay, so here is a book that I have. I have the physical version, but let's pretend for a minute that it's the audiobook that I have, and I want to add this to my collection. You notice this is available from the Ebsco ebooks package. So if I had already turned on the Ebsco ebooks package and I was getting all of the ebooks, I'd bought it as a package or subscribed a resource to it as a package. Probably not, because there's lots and lots of books in there, but you might have. But so I could go ahead, I could turn this on at the package level, or I could even add this to a custom package. Now, this custom package might be more along the lines of, you have a shared resource borrowing system, or a consortia, or union catalog, or something else where this resource is provided to you in another custom package. Maybe you even bought this title individually, as part of a bundle with a publisher. And so you created a custom package. Well, you could add this directly and create a new custom package. So maybe you're doing that with, even with say local faculty resources, you're gonna create a custom package for that. Or I could come down to this package that Ebsco is tracking in the knowledge base under a single provider. And so here I could add this title. It should add this title in real time. Now this title is available to me and metadata associated with it. Now, what I want to do here is, now that I've added this, say a faculty member asked me to add this, and now I want to add an agreement to it. Well, I know that I got this from Ebsco eBooks. So we'll notice what's happening here is I clicked agreements. Sorry, I clicked add an agreement. And even though I'm still in the eHoldings app, the agreements app was called via API. So at the point of need, Folio is making data queries into other apps. This is part of that modularity, right? So I can say, well, I can either look for agreements that are just active. So maybe I actually don't want to do that. I just want to look at agreements that are active. Great, now I see my active agreements. If I wanted to look for specific organizations, I have different filter and browsing functionality here on the left, or maybe I'm a heavy tag use librarian, I have heavy tags, so I can use a search by tags. But I know particularly exactly what I want here. This is out of our Ebsco ebooks. Great, let me go ahead and add the Ebsco ebooks agreement. Now, if I had specific notes, I could do notes there, and I don't have any counter usage data, but I'm going to show that a little bit later to show you what that looks like. And it makes sense to not have it here. We just added this title, right? Okay. So I'm going to look at this agreement because I want to make sure that the license that we have with this agreement will be the right permissions level for this title. So again, if I have a faculty request to add this title, maybe it's going into a course reserve or something like that, I want to look at the license agreement. So I clicked the agreement and notice it took me to the agreements app. So we went out of eHoldings and into the agreements app. And from there, I can now see the details of this agreement. I could see if this was a historical agreement, or if this might even be an agreement that we're about to sign, but we haven't signed it yet. I can see the individual line items in this agreement. So specific titles. So After the Fall, it's a good book. I've read that book. And I could see the underlying license of this agreement. So you notice Unbroken is the title that we just added as an audiobook. I could see the organization associated with this agreement, Ebsco Information Services. I could click into any one of these and it will take me to the licenses app, or it would take me to the organizations app. If I had specific other documentation that I wanted to load, or even, again, say like relational agreements that maybe you should have on file, but it's not something that you've signed directly, but you should have it on file. So if you're managing multiple libraries, say a law library or a medical library, maybe you have these agreements on file at the main library as well, but this is a related agreement, or even related at a collections level. So lots of different reasons to do related agreements. Now, here I am again, Unbroken, and I'm going to click into the license because what I really want to see is the license detail. This takes me to the licenses app. And now I can see the details around this Ebsco license, particularly the terms that are available. Now, I'm just going to edit so we get a little bit bigger of a view of what's in here around this license. Well, the license edit fields are all flexible. And in fact, all of the things we've seen so far, the organization fields, the agreements fields, all of those are fields that we can edit in our settings app. Remember what we said before about a settings app, like on your mobile device, being able to control how apps function. Well, the settings application in Folio controls what fields are available in the other apps, or functions and correlations where they may be mapped to, or even say a role of a field, what it's supposed to do, some logic stuff around it. So anyway, so here I am, I'm in licenses, and I get to see these other relative areas to this license. I could even see, hey, here is a drag and drop. So no more using, Google Drive if you don't want to, or no more using Dropbox, et cetera. You could load your license details right into Folio so that any librarian who is managing your collections and staffs or needs access, if they go away on sick leave or maternity leave or something like that, it's okay. You don't need to ping them. You can go right into Folio and get access to your license. Maybe you don't have a Dropbox, or sorry, maybe you don't want to put it into Folio. You want to keep using your Dropbox. You could just add a URL for a location, or if you have a filing cabinet, you could say, hey, filing cabinet on the 3rd floor, room 305, So whatever descriptive detail you need around where this agreement is stored, you can add all of that here to Folio. As far as the terms of the agreement, again, these are all flexible fields. So in fact, you're going to see some of my other colleagues that have done some fields down here that are in Spanish or Portuguese, I think. I forget what they added. Yeah. So, these fields are completely customizable based on your needs for terms of use tracking. You don't have to have all of the fields there that I just scrolled through. There's a lot. But things that, may be very valuable to you. Something like, is this a resource that can be accessed through proxy? Is this something we should ILL for or support ILL on? What about users that are walk-in users or perpetual access? Can somebody go to our ref desk or get a print of this? So lots of different reasons to track license specifics. And then the visibility of these is also something that can be displayed to patrons. So visibility, public or private. Now I mentioned this earlier with the slides. Folio's APIs and the fact that they're very transparent allows you to build functionality that you might not be able to otherwise. Now, here I am at Cornell, and just to show you this in practice, I am at a specific title, Valeurs Actuales, and I actually get terms of use that are being fed in real time from Folio. So if you wanted to make a terms of use visible from Folio, whether that's for information specialists, you don't think many undergrads are going to get there, but your graduate students might or faculty might, it would be easy for them to access here and see what is it that they can do with this item. Now, another thing, since we're on this topic, although it's not related to licenses, is this ability to use the APIs for other public and patron-facing UIs, right? So we just saw the ability to pull in license data at Cornell. Well, here at Johns Hopkins, they're actually pulling a dynamic databases A to Z list coming from Folio's APIs. So real nice that you could then do other browsing across this or click into this. But the fact that Folio is easy for you to add functionality that might not be there makes a real flexible access point nice to use. I'm going to sign in and show another area of license engagement here, because I have a specific workflow that I wanted to showcase, and that is that access to terms of use, and for that matter, anything that's connected to those APIs is near real time. So here I am in an A to Z list, and if I click into the title, I can actually see the various areas where these resources are turned on, and if a license terms of use has been made public, then I actually get to see that terms of use. So you can see this license doesn't have anything that's been turned on in these fields in Folio. They've all been kept internal. And maybe some licenses are very straightforward and you can keep them internal. There's no reason to display anything. But some licenses have reasons to display access to or restrictions to a patron. So in this case, I get access to HBR from Business Source Ultimate and Gale's Academic One file, although this is an older date, not the current, but maybe I have some back file or something here. Well, this is permitted to walk-in access. No, they want this accessible only to those that are users that are validated users to that institution. So this is a real life use case when you may want to say, no, we don't support access to this resource for walk-in patrons. But these fields, these data points, not only are they real time, but if I make this change in Folio, so if I come back here to eHoldings, I'm gonna have to look for HBR in a minute, get out of unbroken here. You notice, by the way, even though it had been some time since I was in the eHoldings app at that unbroken page, I was still there. It didn't navigate me away, which is great. It allows me to continue my workflow and navigate around Folio, regardless of what I might be doing. Okay, so Harvard's Business Review, Harvard Business Review, and I only want to see where I've turned this one on. So here are the three that correspond with these three, right? Academic One file, publisher site, and Business Source Ultimate. So if I come down here to this resource and I say, you know what, I don't need my back files anymore, so I can remove that. I only want to keep up with HBR for current content only. I can come down into here and just see that I've turned this off. Great. So this, remember, being that this is fed in real time, should update my A to Z list in real time. So now I only have it available from those two. So again, a central point for workflow that now makes it easier for you to manage the lion's share of your collection, which is E, and it impacts where your patrons come into the library, discovery, A to Z lists, etc. So all of this is something that Folio can do today and can do much easier than, say, taking on a full ILS. That still has value. That may be something you're trying to look to do in a long term. Maybe you need to go to tender, or you have this longer evaluation process, never mind the 6-month implementation time window or anything else there. But you want to get a hold on your e-resources today. You want to better manage them today. Folio can do that today as just an ERM tool. Okay, so we've talked about our e-holdings, agreements, and licenses. There's not really a ton to cover that you haven't already seen in organizations. Just as an idea, coming into organizations, you can track who your primary contacts are, contact details. In fact, we actually have a good example here where if I am making procurement, I'm doing purchases in Amazon, I can see what my EDI information is. So if I need to encumber funds from an ordering standpoint, I can do all of that in my organizations app around that vendor. This is a accounting code and it's flagged as a vendor. So there's lots of different details in the organizations app on how you use and engage with other organizations, not necessarily a vendor. In fact, if I just want to see an active, I can see national office, and oh, that's flagged as a vendor. We had in the national office that was not a vendor. Well, is vendor, I just want to see no. There we go. Okay, so not flagged as a vendor, description about who they are. If I have contact details, I can add all that here. Lots of ways to use organizations based on how you want to track engagement with your library and other businesses or partners that you may work with on a regular basis. In the Orders app, this is where I would be able to go ahead and make a purchase. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to make, sorry, not Okta. I'm going to make a purchase in Gobi and look at an order that comes through. Let's see here. Okay, so I am going to add an individual title here. And you notice all this detail, by the way, from our orders and fund accounting codes. All this is fed from Folio. Folio does have EDIFACT compliant APIs, so we could connect these. So if I have a history fund and I want to track this as it comes through to my account details, I can do all of that. Yeah, this looks okay. Okay, so there's my order. Wait a couple seconds and try to get open order right here. And I'm looking for this PO. So 11002, come back here to Folio. I want to look for an open order. Let's see here. 11002, no pipe dreams for father. No pipe dreams for father. So that was very fast to be able to have the order purchased on the vendor platform and then the order come into Folio where I can see the order record here. So notice there's delineation between the order itself. So if you're gonna order 10 items at once, or maybe you need to order a large collection in its entirety, or you just want to do one purchase across many different rationale or needs, but you're going to just do it at one time. You could do all of that into Folio, and Folio will delineate orders versus the order line items. So coming down here, I can see the actual line items down here. So click to that, or I could even just click on the line item itself if I wanted to. Orders, show it over on this side. Nope, 11002. There's my order. PO, when it was created by date, costing if it's there, the line items, invoices if we had them, click into the line item. And I could go ahead and if this was a physical item and I was using full Folio, I could receive this item. If it was as it is, it's in this case, it would be an EResource, and we would want to just go ahead and add this to our collection if we were going to be doing this that way. But from order standpoint, as an app, nope, where are you going? Goodness gracious, lost my window. There we go. So orders as an app is included in your ERM services. So for you to track databases or titles that you've made purchases of, custom collections, etc., you could track all the way down to the POFs and order numbers and encumbrances, etc. In addition, you have your invoices. So if you wanted to look at specific invoices that are sent and manage those that can approve and pay for them, there are workflows around this with permissions levels for accessing librarians. So there's lots of functionality here around invoices. And then lastly, it's not here. So there's a finance app as well. Let me sign out really quick. The finance app as well, that's also included. And this one would be around tracking specific funds, fiscal years, ledgers, anything that you need around your bursar system details. So what did you need around year over year rollovers, et cetera. So this is a lot of that acquisition workflow is made up between that orders app, invoices app, and the finances app. And all of it, with a drive to make sure that you have better clarity around your EResources and the spend and then usage, which ties me to usage. So let me show you that. We're going to look for one particular package here that I know that we have counter usage for. So one of the things that Folio, again, can do, since it's being powered by APIs, is consume APIs around counter compliant, sushi harvested counter compliant data, and then map it into specific either packages or individual databases. So those, how you have purchased things as a library and how you want them to roll up is how you could then feed them into the analytics here. So this usage and analysis, this is sushi harvested, counter compliant R5 as well, counter compliant 4 and 5. Details on this particular package. So this package is the Wiley Online Library. And I can see the total cost is 25,000 here, and our total usage is 29,000, and an average cost per use by 87 cents. Well, if I want to see the title level detail, I can see underneath this the title level detail as well. So if I have a Wiley sales rep asking me to renew my package, I can come right into Folio. I don't have to go to some separate tool. I can come right into Folio and I could see if my collections are being used. And if so, is there big disparity on what's used and what's not? And maybe that impacts how I go about renewing that resource or engaging with that vendor. Maybe I want to bundle this with something else. Maybe this is widely used. That's great. So I'm definitely going to keep on using Wiley's Online Library, and I want to add that to another tool. So these counter statistics, the important part here is that it's at the point of need for me when I'm engaging in managing my EResources. It's not in some separate activity. It doesn't have to be project driven. It can be a regular data point that I look at that's all fed. So a nice engagement for an ERM tool particularly. So with that, I've covered quite a lot of ERM management. There are other individual apps we haven't really covered around workflow, like a tasks app and a dashboard app. Pardon me, the reason why we haven't really discussed them is because they're highly, highly flexible in that they really map towards what you would do as a user. So for instance, this dashboard app is included in Folio's ERM tool, but these individual dashboards are completely open to use and they're mapped to the user level of Folio. So what one person's dashboard is might be different from somebody else's dashboard. This means that I can actually set up a dashboard that is important for my daily workflows. Maybe I'm supposed to all the time make sure that resources that are a renewal priority, that if they have a deadline coming up, then they're on this list. So if I come in here to American Mathematical Society, I can see that this deadline has already passed. And this was a priority, a renewal priority for me. So it came up on my dashboard for me to look at. There was a trigger that triggered this to come up. Well, what about this Wiley eJournal package? Again, it had a deadline coming up and a resource of definitely renew. Or a flag of definitely renew. What about this JSTOR one all the way at the bottom? Well, this one is pending. So, it's in priority order there. And it says, hey, you don't have to do this one yet, but it's coming up. So this is a daily workflow app that allows me to make sure I accomplish the tasks that I'm supposed to do that day. And these dashboards, again, are customizable. I will note one interesting little point here in that this app was built outside of the Folio community by a business called Knowledge Integrated, KINT. They're out of the UK, and they, they know about Folio, they heard about Folio, they like Folio, and then only recently, in the last, say, 3 months or so, did they start to get engaged in Folio, and they built an app, and they're deploying it on Folio, and they have other ideas for other apps. In fact, they have apps for that they're talking about deploying for on-the-fly UI changes to language, where I could come up here as a user, and right now these are my only menus, but another menu here would be language, and I could immediately change the whole UI as a language dropdown. Right now, languages are controlled in my settings app. So, they've decided to build something a little more user-focused on their session and changing dynamic things there. And that's similar to what they did here. They did a user-focused, a librarian-focused app around actionable activities. So this is something that Folio is very open to. Any partner or institution that wants to build functionality that Folio libraries want or need, they can certainly do that. There isn't any restriction around that. Okay, so with that, I've wrapped up what I really intended to cover here today. I know we're going to do, Cher, going back to you, I know we're going to do a game, or maybe Joseph's going to lead that. And then I don't know if we're going to do Q&A after that, or you want to do Q&A first, whatever you guys want to do.
Yes, we're going to do Q&A first, Mike. Thank
Okay.
you very much for that insightful and comprehensive talk on Folio ERM. Now for the open forum, Bon, do you have some questions in the Q&A box or privately?
Okay, so thank you very much, Mike, for that very insightful session on Folio ERM. So we got a bunch of questions here from our participants. And the first question is, how do we implement Folio ERM if we will be the one to host it?
So you would need to go to the Folio wiki, I would say, is probably the good place to start. And then from the wiki, there are links in the header up top for the Folio development community. Then from the development community is everything you need around documentation to download and implement a Folio tenant, around how to set up what's called Okapi, how to set up the underlying storage layers, and then how to set up the individual applications. So once you get your tenant and environment ready, then you as a library would be able to choose which apps you wanted in your Folio environment, and those could be ERM specific apps if you wanted to.
Okay, that's good. Actually, there are 2 participants who have asked information of Folio implementation, and we have sent the link to wiki.folio.org, which contains most of the relevant information about Folio. So sure, let me take another question. So I think we are getting more private questions than the Q&A. Maybe they are shy on doing the questions in the Q&A tab. So the next question is, Mike, because these are ERM focuses more of EResources. So there was a question here: is there a minimum or what is the minimum number of EResources recommended to have Folio ERM?
So I wouldn't say that there's a some minimum threshold of resources you've enabled. I think it's more about your own workflow, and do you feel like you're stressed, I'll say, where you have different places that you keep and track stuff, and maybe it's one person doing it and they really don't have the ability to respond to individual project requests because their workflow is already very full, or maybe you have it across multiple people, and similarly, they don't have the ability to say, yes, I know exactly where to get to my license. Yes, I can tell you exactly the last order form on this is, or even if it was more about you're trying to get off of things that might have security risks, like putting an agreement or something on a Dropbox or something like that, then you might want to be considering Folio ERM as a solution. As far as account of resources, I would say generally any library that's using a discovery service has enough resources turned on that probably warrants some underlying management tool. You're using a discovery service that searches across all of them at once rather than looking individually. So if you have a need to search across all at once because there's so many, probably makes sense to have one that helps you manage them as well.
Bon, we have questions in the Q&A.
Yes. So actually, Mike, I think this is a rejoinder on the previous question. So there is a question from an anonymous attendee that is it advisable to start with, I guess this is Folio ERM, even if our e-collections or our e-resources is not that big yet?
If you intend to go Folio full, then I would say there's no reason to not start on ERM unless you're just going to go Folio full right out the gate. But Folio ERM gives you an opportunity to become familiar with Folio. And again, ERM is a big portion of the library's footprint. So a lot of your management can then be done in Folio right there, and leaving your bibliographic descriptive work or circulation work or any of that kind of stuff to something that might come a little bit later.
Yes, you are right. Because currently, in this time of the global pandemic and for e-learning, there are institutions here, especially here in the Philippines, that had just started their online resources collection. So it's also good insight from you that if they are really migrating to like a library service platform already from their existing ILS, this is also a good approach on managing those resources. And there's another one here. I think this is with regards to purchases inside Folio ERM. So can we use Folio ERM even if we do not purchase resources from Gobi? I think this is from ebooks. Yes.
Yeah. That was just simply to show you that Folio has APIs that can be leveraged at procurement platforms. So I had a question at a different webinar that I did that was whether or not ProQuest's eBook Central could be connected to Folio as well. And in fact, we told them on the call, and it still stands today, that the answer is yes. The priority about connecting it is really then either on the library that is implementing Folio that really wants to connect to a ProQuest eBook Central API or some other connection there, or if ProQuest themselves wants to get involved in Folio and build an API connection that allows their content to be purchased directly into Folio, that's fine too. So really any platform that has an API available, and you saw me go into the Amazon organizations app and look at our vendor ID and other things that we track in the organizations app for Amazon. If you make purchases on Amazon for collections, you could do that there and have that be fed into orders as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And that's the good thing about Folio. We are really a vendor. That the Folio is like vendor neutral. So every the possibility of integration is seamless. There's another question here with regards to the timeline of implementation. So there's a question here: how long would be the implementation of let's say they will be getting the services of Ebsco for Folio ERM?
So it's a bad answer, but the answer is it depends. We would like to say that an implementation for ERM is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Usually the first 2 weeks is about getting the Folio tenant set up from the underlying AWS architects and engineers. And then from there, the implementation team takes over and they work with the library. There'll be phone calls with the library, meetings with the library, and some documentation requirements going back and forth about setting it up. But we would like to say that ERM, especially if you're already using Ebsco's knowledge base and you already have collections enabled there, really it's just about connecting that KB in your profile and having that come through into Folio, and then working on your organizational settings and other types of things. It's more like settings, which fields are available and which apps. And so that generally that shouldn't take that long. 4 to 6 weeks is what we like to see.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And I guess it will always be dependent on the the cooperation between of course the library in terms of migration of
Yeah.
their data as well.
Yeah, well, and even then, the responsiveness of the library. If our
you're right.
teams reach out to the library and it takes 10 days to turn around on a response, then that slows down the time. And that's hey, things come up, so that's not a negative. It's just reality.
Okay, so Mike, this is a very good question, and this came from a school librarian. So he is managing a school library. So what is the advantage of Folio for school libraries, and how can school libraries maximize this platform?
So school libraries, as in like primary schools?
Yes, they are only offering basic education.
Okay, so most of the time, school libraries don't have very big e-resource footprints. Most of the time, it's a lot of physical resources and a smaller footprint, maybe 5 to 10 databases, not that many databases. So Folio would be good probably for the whole system, and it allows you to capture users and your content for things on the shelf and everything else. As an ERM tool, I would say it might be a little overkill. Might be a little bit too much of a service.
Yes, and I guess as well, Mike, for school libraries, especially here as well in the Philippines, you are right that most of the collections of libraries, these school libraries, are really more of the print ones, because for e-resources, except like for senior high school or maybe like junior high school, but for the preschool or grade school, so this might not be in terms of the online resources that will be applicable to them.
Right.
There is a good question, another question, Mike. There's a good question here. Something about on the I will be rephrasing the question here for better context. So there is a question here that will there be a possibility in Folio ERM for them to integrate their own digitized library materials? Is that possible?
Well, sure. So let's say that you've scanned those objects, whatever they are, you've scanned them, historical collections, heritage collections, whatever they are, you've scanned those digital objects. If you have the descriptive metadata around those objects, maybe you keep it in something as simple as a spreadsheet where you have columns dividing up title and author and date and a brief abstract or whatever that is. So you have this metadata description around your objects. Those records could be loaded into Folio, sure. It would be added as a custom collection in Folio.
Yeah, that's a good insight for them to better understand on how our Folio ERM works as well. And there is, okay, let me read, because there's a follow-up question with regard to the school library that we have discussed a while ago. So
Sure.
the follow-up question is, how flexible is Folio in terms of integration with other, I think these are e-resources platforms like JSTOR, Sora, etc.
So JSTOR is a content provider, I suppose an aggregator as well, but they're a content provider. I don't know that JSTOR actually has a robust ERM tool where they would manage content packages from other providers. They might have a tool that's just for their collections, but I haven't seen one that manages widely. Maybe that exists. I don't know it. So as far as an integration goes, Folio can integrate with other platforms, again, depending upon the APIs that are available from those platforms. A good example of this is we had done an integration proof of concept with an archiving platform. That the archive was built on Preservica, which is an open source archive platform, and records were described in the schema was EAD for archive description records. And you could make a search in Folio and search across records that would be in long-term storage. So, as long as there's an API that's available and the fields come through the API in an okay manner, then integrations should be fine.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that insight. Then let me just grab, because I'm getting more private messages with regards to questions. But let me get two questions more with the for the interest of time. So there's a question here because we mentioned that Folio is an open source. So in terms of Folio ERM, so what will be the limitations of Folio ERM as an open source?
Limitations as in how? That's very wide range.
Yeah, maybe with regards to like services that like I think this is in connection with like Koha, like because Koha is an open source, right? So but there are still like limitations of being an open source platform, maybe more of the additional like services, because a rejoinder to that question is what will be the services can Ebsco extend to help us implement Folio ERM. So that's the rejoinder on that one.
Yeah, so there's actually, we cover that in the slide deck. One of the advantages that Folio has over, say, other open source services is really, pardon me, the connection of authority knowledge bases and the ability to track agreements and licenses and the counter usage all within, and I suppose the settings of those resources, all within the system itself. If I look at Koha, or even Qualia as another open source, those platforms are started as print management. And while they do a little bit of EResource management, they don't have an authority knowledge base connection for it. And they don't provide the ability to manage your counter statistics or attach licenses and agreements and create alerts based on when those agreements are coming due and all of that kind of stuff. So it's that ubiquitous, e-management in those systems that Folio is ENP. So looking at older systems, they're principally print management. And that's because those systems are generally older. We talked this in the very opening 2 minutes that, the last ILS in the market was 10 years old at the earliest. The most recent one is 10 years old, the earliest. That's Alma. So Koha code, it's open source, and yes, it gets updated by the community around Koha, but the primary architecture is much older than that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And for those participants who are asking on how they could, start a Folio with their library, so you have the opportunity to send us more questions once you have filled out the evaluation link, because there will be a portion there for the more Folio inquiries. Then we will be addressing that and maybe provide you with quick information or a phone call if in case you want to explore more of the Folio ERM and Folio as a full suite. And last question, Mike. I think this is with regards to like to start first with Folio ERM, then maybe going through the full suite of Folio, because there's a question here is how can we integrate our ILS with Folio ERM? So maybe the context is that they will start first with ERM and maybe migrating to full suite. So maybe you could expound on that. Thanks,
Sure.
Mike.
So that would be similar to what Cornell University had done, is they were using Voyager, and they didn't have a tool for ERM that was very full or complete. They had done a little bit of ERM management in Coral, but they were principally just using spreadsheets and other workflows. So they used Folio ERM functionality as a separate tool. So yes, there was no direct connection between Voyager, because Voyager's 27 years old, and Folio. They're really two largely separate systems. And so if a librarian's daily workflow was ERM, if they had to manage their e-resources, turn on databases, make sure vendors were being, renewed when they came due and all that kind of stuff, well, then they would be using Folio for that workflow, and they probably wouldn't get into Voyager unless they needed to do something different. So those workflows are largely separate. And then when you decide to add more functionality, you want to move some of the legacy workflow into Folio, then you start growing your Folio functionality footprint too, and you can do that in a very modular fashion.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And maybe we could also, if that will be the plan of that particular library, maybe we could share as well how Cornell University, have done that particular one. And actually, Mike, let me just take this question because this is a nice question from a librarian with regards to compliance with privacy standards. So there's a question here: is Folio compliant with privacy standards of ISO? So
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. We have a certificate we can provide if you need.
Okay. So I think that answers your question, Sir Jonathan. And this is the very last. Sorry. So the last question is, can Folio, because I think more libraries here in the Philippines are, for them to justify, their e-resources renewals. So they really want to present to management something about usability or the usage statistics. So can Folio ERM monitor the usage statistics of their e-resources regardless of vendor?
Yeah, that's the counter compliance statistics that we can pull into Folio. That's vendor agnostic, really. As long as that vendor is counter compliant, sushi compliant, then we can harvest those statistics and pull it in.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and thank you, Mike, for answering all of the questions. And I think questions are still coming in. But for our participants, please feel free to send your inquiries, and because we have a section in our evaluation form for more inquiries, so we will be getting in touch with you. So any final takeaways with this Folio ERM for our participants, Mike?
Final takeaways is that Folio's here. Folio, has been in development for a number of years now, 3 years, just over 3 years. And libraries have been waiting. There's been a lot of interest in Folio, and really there's no need to wait anymore. The functionality, is on 3 sprint cycles. So if you wanted to see what's going to be shipped in the next release, you can go look at the wiki page and see what's coming up on the next release. It will continue to add more and more functionality as we go. And if you are really interested in Folio and sitting on the sidelines, then you have no ability to impact what comes up in the next release, right? The best way to add functionality that you want to see in Folio is to become part of the Folio community. So that's my parting words.
Thank you thank you very much, Mike, for a very insightful session. And I'll give the floor now to Cher for our, I think, one of the most exciting part of this webinar. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you, Bon. Wow, those were a lot of questions, and I'm glad most were answered. But again, if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to email either Joseph, Bon, or myself. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Or you can also put your questions on the evaluation form after this webinar. Okay, now for the most awaited part of our webinar, it's game time. Yes, let me share with you the guidelines or the game mechanics. Okay, let's show them, Bon. To play this game, you have to click the provided link in the Zoom chat box that will be given by Joseph. Joseph, are you ready with the link? And then this is very important. If you do not follow this format, you will be disqualified. Nako, ang tindi. But please try. It will be easier for us to know who you are. Please write your first name and last name, and then the affiliated institution initials. So better that way, because you might have the same name with another participant. So an example would be Joseph Halos, and then Ebsco. So write your first name, last name, and then your institution. We will give you 2 minutes to register. I think Joseph already placed the link on the chat box. And yes, we have prizes. For the first place, we will give 1,000 pesos. For the second place, 500 pesos. And for the third place, 300 pesos. I'm seeing some of the participants write their names on the chat box. That's not right. You have to click on the link. And then on the link, you will be asked to write your name. And that's where you write your first name, last name, and name of institution. So please be mindful, the chat box here will not make you enter the game. You have to click on the link. And then this game is about speed and accuracy. So the game link is there, and then the game code, I will read to you. The game code is 836330. Again, that's 836330. Okay, so you will be
Okay,
prompted.
so let us I'll be stop sharing Sure, for them to see Joseph I think screen if
Okay.
we are receiving game contestants.
I already registered to see if it's working. So there, very good. I can see already some names here on screen. Again, we will give you 2 minutes. Wow, we already have 96, 97, 98 participants. Please,
Very
sayang
exciting.
prize. Yes. How many more minutes,
Don't
Bon?
worry, hindi po ito Squid Game, don't worry.
Yes.
So maybe we still have, maybe let's give
Let's
them
give
like
them 30 seconds. 30
yes,
seconds
Okay.
maybe.
because we are 317 here in Zoom, so we are almost not reaching half yet. So I
You can
think they are,
actually
yeah.
you can actually use your mobile devices to log in so that it's separate from the from your
View.
if you're viewing it from your computers, you can log into your mobile.
Yes, just press joinmyquiz.com and then enter the game code. Okay, we have now 130. It has maybe we can start last.
Okay.
5,
Okay.
4, 3, 2,
Habol na lang
1.
po.
Oo, pwede pang humabol. Okay, can we start, Joseph? Okay, for question number 1. What does FOLIO stand for? The future of library is open. The futures of libraries is open. The future of libraries is open. Or the future of libraries are open. Go!
Very tricky, di ba? Read the options.
Okay. The leaderboard. Let's
Tingnan
see.
natin kung sinong school ang
Wow.
nangunguna.
FEU. Bon,
Wow.
exciting. Nako,
FEU.
may mga mali. But the answer is the future of libraries is open. Next question. Joseph, let's go. What does ERM in FOLIO stand for? Electronic Records Management, Electronic Recording Machine, Electronic Resource Manager, or Electronic Resource Management?
Read the options carefully.
Ayan, nag-change na ang ating...
Wow, Sir Eugene, number 1.
Yes. Next question. Ebsco Folio ERM is a modern time-saving platform that can increase efficiency, make renewal of EResources easy, make usage for EResources less stress on staff, or all mentioned. And the answer is, of course, lahat yon kaya, all mentioned. Matibay si Sir Eugene. Bon.
Oh, there's one from Ika. And Sir Pius, parang number 3 nakita ko.
Wow, come on, sirs. Kaya niyo yan. Keep it up. Next question. What is the goal of Ebsco Folio ERM? Manage the entire life cycle of your e-resources from initial purchase to next renewal. Integrates Ebsco knowledge base to remove manual entry and duplication of work of libraries. All mentioned. Go. The answer is all mentioned, Bon. Oh, wow. Ang tibay
Go,
ni
Sir
Sir.
Pius.
Okay, next question, please. How will Ebsco Folio ERM help manage your e-resource? Find providers package and titles easily add packages to your holdings in an instant, readily view and update contacts, notes, licenses, and agreements. Enjoy the direct integration with Ebsco KB to auto-populate key information, including your local holdings. Or all mentioned. The answer is all mentioned. Again,
Hi,
this
Sir
game
Gary. So, Sir
is
Gary,
about,
number 3.
yes, this game is about speed and accuracy, Bon. So, kailangan talaga mabilis sumagot.
Yes, kahit all mentioned, kailangan mauna ka sa all mentioned.
Yes, next question. What is the name of our Folio ERM presenter? Oh, this is important. Mike McKinnon, Michael McKinnon, Mike McKinnon, or Mike McDonald? Go. The answer is, of course, Mike McKinnon.
Uy, nag-iiba siya. So, second na is from Ika. Then, third one is nag-iba din. Habol pa po.
If you have any questions on Ebsco Folio ERM, who can you contact? Favorite ko to. Is it Tito Vic or Joey? Is it Boncher or Joseph? Or is it Larry, Mo, or Curly? Go!
Yeah, kailangan pa bang i-memorize yan?
Oo, pag di nga yan alam, nako, lagot. Of course, the answer is... Sinong answer? Siyempre,
Ma'am
Joseph,
Fretzy.
Bon, or
Si Ma'am
Sure?
Fretzy, pang-apat si Ma'am Fretzy, nakita ko.
Hala, merong Tito Vic and
How
Joey.
many questions pa ba tayo?
I
Ala,
think
that will
that's
be
the last.
that's
So
the last question. Okay. So let's see po. But there was a chat message here from Sir Eugene na ipapass down daw po niya yung kanya. So the second will be the first.
Okay, let's see. So the first place is Miss Melanie Anulao of ICA. Second place is Miss Divina Mendoza of NDA. And then who was the... Ma'am Fretzy.
Ma'am Fretzy would be the third.
Kayo po pala. Yan po.
Wow, Ma'am Fretzy
Congrats po, Ma'am
Fajardo of
Fretzy. Miss
Ateneo.
Melanie and Miss Divina Mendoza. Okay.
Thank you, Sir Eugene, for donating your prize.
Yes, thank you very much. That was fun, exciting. Nag-enjoy ba kayo?
So sure, how can they get their prize?
Okay, so they have to send a Bon or myself a private message now and send their name, institution, and also their GCash number because the prizes will be sent through GCash. So please send a private message to Bon or myself now during the session so that we can immediately, after the webinar, send you your cash prizes. Congratulations again. We hope you had fun. Favorite namin yun sa Ebsco, magpa-game pag webinar namin. So, there. And then now for some announcements. Okay, so As mentioned initially, we will be giving out digital certificates for the participants who attended our webinar. We're so happy because we are 313 strong. From the start, hindi sila bumibitaw. So thank you very much. For those who are here, the requirements for you to get your certificate is that you should have registered and attended via Zoom and then accomplish the webinar evaluation form. So there is a link and a QR code in your screen now. Kindly take a photo or a screenshot and then just access the evaluation link. And then this will be open until October 24, 11:59 p.m. After the time, we will close the link so you cannot anymore answer the evaluation form. So that is a requirement in order to get the certificate. You have to answer the evaluation. Again, the certificates will be emailed to you minimum of 2 weeks. So please be patient with us. So medyo madami-dami yung email na certificate. So give us a minimum of 2 weeks. And then the webinar recording will also be posted in Ebsco Southeast Asia Facebook page. And with that, we would like to give them the links again. Bon, can you change the screen? Please, for more information on our webinar today, kindly visit the sites mentioned by Mike earlier. And also Bon, take a photo of this. And also we would like to tell everyone to please visit our Facebook page, Ebsco Southeast Asia. Please follow because we will be posting there all webinars that we have and any information or new products of Ebsco, we will be posting it in the Facebook page of Ebsco Southeast Asia. Yes, Joseph, you want to say something?
Okay, just wanted to add something. Now, there were several questions in the chat box in the Q&A regarding the trial for Folio. If I'm not mistaken, Mike mentioned that, right? Mike, it's either in the Wikifolio or in the folio.org that they can actually go in and try the interface, right? The UI.
Yeah, if you go to wiki.folio.org, the second link there that Bon has up on the left-hand side. In fact, if we have time, I can just show everybody.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So that for those librarians who would want to try out Folio, you can try it out. So we don't really give away Ebsco. We don't really give away the trial ourselves, but you can go to the Folio link provided to you.
But I mean, the reason on a trial we wouldn't, provide trials for Folio is because there's not a lot of data behind the trials. It needs the institutions to populate their own data. So instead, it's actually better for libraries to go to the wiki.folio.org, and come to this page. And there's lots of information on this page, but if you scroll down here, a lot of documentation links, lots of different areas for special interest groups. But right here are some demo environments. So you could see the current release, you could see releases that are in development. So if you want to see what functionality might be new, and then the credentials are right up here. These tenants have data in them. So, and it's intentional so that libraries have an environment to play around in, provide feedback to the community on, or even for developers to work with as they're building new functionality or doing bug fests or any of the other things that they need to do for Folio development sprints.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, that's very good information, Mike. Okay, so this is it. It's the end of our webinar. On behalf of our team, Joseph, Bon, and myself, Sher, and also our marketing team, our marketing person is here, Nawa. Thank you. And also our library services engineer, Ching Wei. And of course, thank you very much for our speaker, Mike McKinnon. We would like to thank everyone who attended our webinar today. We hope that you learned a lot. And also, please visit our Facebook page for more information on Ebsco. And please stay safe and healthy and have a blessed Thursday today. Okay, bye everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for attending.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nawa.
Mike.
Thanks,
Thank
Thanks,
Chingwei.
Nawa. Thanks, Chingwei. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Don't
Congratulations to the
forget to fill
winner.
up the evaluation link. That will also be sent by Zoom to you. Thank you.
And also visit our Southeast Asia Ebsco page, Facebook page. So we also have all updates. You will see all updates about Ebsco in the Southeast Asia page of Ebsco in Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you. Recording. Maybe we can stop recording.